unique. You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, "Oh, I'm just gonna JV it." Like, it's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today. So thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, "Well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to."
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property. It'll be okay. Suddenly, Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, we're talking about resolutions for your business going into 2024. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to like our channel. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook. You can find us on X, formerly known as Twitter. And you can find us at the handle @InRem Podcast. That's @InRem Podcast. Also, if you just want to mill around the house and listen to the podcast in its audio version, you can go on to Spotify. You can go to Apple or all of the major podcast platforms and download an audio version of the podcast. We'd appreciate it. Leave us a review. That would be awesome. With that, we're going to go to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So today, my legal update is going to focus on the question of the difference between a mortgage and a deed of trust. So what's the difference between a mortgage and deed of trust? So a lot of times we use those terms interchangeably. We say, "Oh, they're going to make their mortgage payment," or "I'm going to record a mortgage," that type of thing. When really you're referring to a deed of trust or a loan payment or something like that. But we've kind of used those terms, mortgage and deed of trust, interchangeably, or more often than not, we refer to a deed of trust as a mortgage. But in reality, they really are two separate instruments. And it is important to understand the differences between those instruments. So first, a mortgage is kind of your traditional lien against real estate to secure a loan. And it's what was used for a significant period of time to secure loans. So if you have a loan and you've given a promissory note to the lender, the mortgage was then recorded securing that loan. And the mortgage is basically giving the lender a lien against real estate, whereby that lender, if they're not being paid, can foreclose against the real estate. Before the advent of deeds of trust, a mortgage would have to be foreclosed judicially, which means you would have to go and file a lawsuit with the court, serve the lawsuit, go through the process, and have the court enter a judgment basically authorizing the sheriff of whatever county the property is located to sell the property at a sheriff's sale. And that was the process to foreclose a mortgage. Well, as you can imagine, creditors didn't like that. So they came up with the idea of a deed of trust. And a deed of trust is given to secure the repayment of a loan. And it does also act as a lien against the property, but it does more than just act as a lien against the property. It actually, from a legal perspective, places bare title into the hands of a trustee. So technically you're placing title of the property into the hands of a trustee named in the deed of trust, who then has the power to sell the property without going to court. So they can do what's called a trustee sale, and they can go and basically record notice of that trustee sale, follow the applicable requirements of the law, and then they go and they can actually complete the foreclosure of the property without ever filing a lawsuit, without any court supervision or oversight. And they complete it. So it's a lot faster more efficient, more cost-effective method of foreclosing. Now, not every state offers a deed of trust. It's kind of a mixed bag here in the US. About half of the states will allow for deeds of trust, and other states remain mortgage states. In Arizona, we allow both deeds of trust and mortgages. So we still could allow mortgages, but 99% of the time, nobody takes a mortgage in Arizona, because why do you want to have to foreclose judicially? You want to be able to foreclose outside of the court system. So when you're talking about loans and loans being secured against real estate, it's important to understand what instrument, number one, the state that you're doing business in allows. So if you're a lender, you should probably figure out, okay, am I going to make a loan to a borrower in a mortgage state, which means I probably have to go into court and foreclose that mortgage judicially with court oversight, which is going to take a little longer and be more costly? Or am I making a loan in a deed of trust state where I can actually have a private trustee foreclose on the property outside of the court system, which is going to be less time consuming and more cost effective. And so that's even one consideration when making private loans is, what state am I dealing with? What are the laws in the state as far as mortgages and deeds of trust? And then making sure to choose the correct instrument. So I've seen situations where in Arizona, somebody who wasn't used to Arizona's laws and maybe was a private lender making loans in mortgage states, they used their mortgage form here in Arizona and recorded that, thinking that that's what they had to do to secure the loan. Well, it worked, but they still would have to do a judicial foreclosure. And so in hindsight, they should have been doing a deed of trust. So it's very important to understand the differences. If you're going to lend money, or you're going to sell property on a seller carryback or something along those lines, it's very important that you understand the difference between a mortgage and deed of trust, and you understand the laws of the state that you're dealing in with respect to those two instruments.
All right. Thank you, Sean. With that, let's go through a couple of announcements. Make sure to join us this afternoon at 3:00 p.m. for the Creative Finance Collective. So what is the collective if you're just learning about it for the first time? The Creative Finance Collective is an opportunity for lawyers in the creative finance space, whether they're here in Arizona like Sean or myself, or lawyers in other states. And those states have included in the collective Texas, Ohio, Florida, Maryland, Georgia, Alabama, really all over the place. What it is a collection of attorneys and professionals in the space getting together to talk about creative finance, working through issues that we're seeing in other states, understanding and talking through any laws that have been passed in other jurisdictions we're not familiar with. But what we do throughout the collective, it's 1 hour, is we make ourselves available to you, the listener, who or investor who might be interested in creative finance, to ask questions. We're captive to you to answer those questions. Last week, we had a lot of questions, and that's what we hope for. That's what we want. So if you're interested in learning about creative finance or hearing lawyers discuss it as they approach it in their particular areas, make sure to join us. Again, it's at 3 p.m. Arizona time. It will be live, and you can watch it on YouTube, Facebook, or X, formerly known as Twitter. So make sure to join us for that. Also, if you have any questions today, we're going to start taking questions about 20 minutes before the end of the episode. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Don't wait. Do it now. We're monitoring the chat. So if you have those, you don't have to worry about forgetting them. Just put them there, and we will get to them as best that we can. With that, we're going to go ahead and get into our topic today, which is resolutions for your business going into 2024. And here to discuss that is our friend Darius Green, real estate broker here in Arizona. Darius, how are you?
Good morning, guys. I'm fantastic. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, awesome to have you. So tell our listeners about you, what you do, your time at Kaiser, and what that firm does generally, and how you serve clients.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm one of the founding partners for Kaiser Commercial Real Estate Advocates. We are a full service tenant rep firm based here in Scottsdale, but do work all over the globe. And essentially, what we do is we help companies align their real estate spend with the overall strategy of the company, right? So we first help with strategy because real estate is usually a top three expense for most organizations housing their business or whatever it is they do, right? Nonprofit, for profit, et cetera. And then we go out and help them execute it in the market as their brokers representing them in an unconflicted manner, which, as you guys know, as attorneys, real estate is one of the few, probably the last bastion where you can actually be conflicted in these transactions. So we are strictly representing the interests of the user, whether they want to own or lease. And we just celebrated 11 years this year as a firm, and I've been doing this for close to 20.
Now, Darius, you didn't start out as a real estate broker, right? You started out, you went to law school, right?
Yeah, as a fact, Sean and I we're in the same class at ASU Law and have known each other for a long time. So yeah, I still hold my license and never really practiced. It was kind of a weird time when we graduated right around 9/11. There weren't a whole lot of jobs for first years that weren't all stars like Sean. So us other people, we had to figure it out, and real estate is how it worked out for me. And I love it. And, it actually helps. And this is one thing I wanted to say about what you guys are doing. I really like what you're doing with the podcast because I'm a real estate junkie. I'm watching all kinds of real estate YouTube channels, podcasts, buying product. And it's usually right from from the aspect of, how to get these deals done, right? How to go out and make money in real estate, whether it's multifamily, single family residence, flipping, whatever it is. And the legal aspects of it are usually kind of just, brushed over and not really focused on. And it's very important, right? And in order to have these deals be successful long term and short term. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing, bringing the legal aspect of, hey, here's how you get things done and get things done right, and checking off that box legally.
So why don't we begin, Darius, with 2023? Break that down for us. What did 2023 look like for you, your clients, and your industry specifically?
23 was a very interesting year, right? We're still feeling the after effects of COVID, right? People are still returning to the office. People are still figuring out their workforce, their workplace strategy. But as a firm, we actually had our best year by far as a firm, and that's coming off of 22, which was previously our best year as a firm. So we've been really blessed, and that's really a testament to essentially our clients sticking with us over the long term, and then also helping us, referring us business, et cetera. So Phoenix has actually been blessed as a market overall nationally. Like, we've been the recipient of goodwill from a lot of companies and people that have moved here at a higher pace than usual. Usually, people are moving here over the past few decades, but now it seems at a higher clip, and that's been helpful for commercial real estate overall.
Now, I know that the chatter out there for the folks like Sean and I who are just lawyers in the space, and we do some commercial work, but by no means are we commercial investors, and really tapped into that. But a lot of the chatter that's out there is, oh, there's a big commercial bubble, or there's big issues in the commercial space. But it doesn't sound like 2023 was that way at all for you in Kaiser. What do you guys attribute that to?
Well, part of it is our business model, right? Being that we're only representing the end user of the space, which most of the time in business is a tenant, right? Very few organizations own their real estate. Um, our business model tends to be counter-cyclical from downturns and cycles. And that's because usually those tenants need more advice, more consulting, more strategy, right? Because if you think about it, a lease is a static document, right? It's a static agreement that really doesn't change. And business ebbs and flows, as we all know, right? And so sometimes your business is affecting your lease situation, and so you bring in guys like me and my partners, and we can help you strategize on how to maybe get out from under a bad lease, or some creative strategies on what to do next, whether that means subleasing or whatever the case may be.
Well, and I just want to point out, as we talk about, business planning for 2024, the fact that you guys do more than just commercial tenant real estate or commercial buyer, transactions. You actually will sit down with your clients and take a look at their business model, their business structure. And Andy and I know this firsthand. I mean, we've used your team on multiple tenant transactions where you represented us as the tenant. In fact, you and Andy are there in the office right now. And your team got us in there, and we couldn't be happier. So thank you for that. But also thank you for the advice that you just provide, when you sit down with a business owner and say, okay, not every space is going to work for you. Not everything is going to fit for your business model. So let's figure it out. So, when we talk about that, why is resolutions or business planning important for businesses?
That is a good question, and thank you for the acknowledgement. We are always happy to hear that our clients, who we look at as partners, right? We're business owners ourselves, so we like to let them know that, hey, we're in the same boat, right? We actually just signed a lease earlier this year, which is part of 2023 for us. But New Year's resolutions are important. I'm not a resolution guy, but I think it's a time, in the annual cycle, right, to reflect, right? There's an opportunity there, and I think the main opportunity is to look at opportunities for you personally and for you as a business going forward, right? So one of the things that I'll be doing during my time off over the holidays is first of all doing what I call a personal SWOT analysis, right, on me as a business owner and as a leader, and then obviously that can go on into how do I, what are the opportunities in our business, right? How can we improve on our service, our deliverables, et cetera? What are the opportunities from a recruiting standpoint? What are the opportunities, on and on and on? What are those opportunities? And then what am I going to do about those opportunities identified, and putting together a plan around that?
What is a SWOT analysis? What does that stand for?
SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And traditionally you put it in 4 quadrants, and you write all those down one at a time, and then you have something that's on paper that you can then make a plan off of.
And
Go ahead, John.
go ahead, Andy. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was going to say, so when do you typically like to kind of construct this analysis or do a SWOT analysis? Is this like something you like to carve out the last half of December, that last week coming into?
Exactly. When the few times of the year that I try to completely unplug is that time between Christmas and New Year's, or right after New Year's, because a lot of times I have, including this year, a lot of volunteer things that I'm doing with the Fiesta Bowl and whatnot. And so usually that time right after New Year's, after the Fiesta Bowl, is when I'll take time off for a week or two and really get dive deep into all of that.
Now, my alma mater's playing in that Fiesta Bowl. I went to law school at Liberty. That's they're playing.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, they're undefeated, aren't they?
Yeah, well, until the Fiesta Bowl, probably.
Until they meet Oregon.
Yeah, until they meet
Yeah,
Oregon.
well, you know what? Don't count them out. Remember what Boise State did to Oklahoma way back when.
Yeah, counting on it.
There's always a chance.
So what do you like to do after you've planned this out and gone through the SWOT analysis? I'm guessing you probably do this kind of at a corporate level with Kaiser as well, but you mentioned you're doing this at an individual level. That sounds like all fine and good. most people listening think, boy, I could do that. Maybe I'm kind of already doing that, not with as much structure, but I like that. But with all resolutions, they die on the vine by about January 3rd or so. So what makes business resolutions, what do you put in place in order to make sure that you engage and adopt those resolutions throughout the year?
Good question. It's about accountability, right? So luckily I have some tremendous business partners where we hold each other accountable. And so we have a regular meeting rhythm where we're all meeting together as partners. It's probably a little bit more than quarterly. It's not monthly. It's probably semi-quarterly, right? Um, every other month. And so we all have our responsibilities and then we all have our own KPIs that we're responsible for. So the accountability piece is huge when it comes to, you know, continuing to work towards those goals that you set at the beginning of the year.
S So you mentioned 2023.
Mhm.
Give us an idea about what you're projecting and what do you think 2024 is going to look like? And what are the top things that you think, at least in your business or that other business owners should have as a high priority of things they should be thinking about going into 2024?
Wow. So for 2024, there's a lot swirling around, right, in the environment. And when you look at, our economic environment, when you look at the political environment, when you look at the world stage, so I would just say expect the unexpected, right? As far as business owners, I think that's good no matter what the environment looks like, is always to try to inspect the unexpected. So for us, from a real estate perspective, I think there's going to be a little bit more of the same with regards to from the tenant perspective, right? I think there's going to be more opportunity because we're going to continue to have stressed and de-stressed assets out there on the landlord side in office in particular. Yes, industrial is very healthy nationally. Yes, medical office is pretty healthy nationally from a vacancy rate perspective. But I think there's still going to be opportunities if you get out ahead of it in terms of your lease expiration, no matter what product type you're in, and if you have a plan, right? And so um, I would say that's number one. Number two, with regards to just in business in general, I really think there's an opportunity, and we're looking at it ourselves. And it's all the buzz, right? But how does AI play into improving what you do, whether it's from an efficiency standpoint, whether it's from a deliverable standpoint, to the end product for your client. So I think that's something that every business owner should be looking at if they're not looking at it already. And then the one that is probably going to be with us for the rest of our days is cybersecurity, right? It's a continuing issue for everybody, personal and business, and with the change in technology constantly happening, right? You can't just keep doing the same thing that you've always been doing. You gotta, get some expert advice. I'm by no means an expert on that, and try to stay, on the curve as much as you can.
I'm curious, since you're thinking about this, we had a whole show about this. It's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but what areas are you
I
seeing
love
some?
rabbit trails.
Yeah. What areas are you seeing opportunities when in your space when it comes
Mhm.
to AI? We had a whole show about that, and there was a lot of opportunities with client generation or, in sales and
Exactly. I
things like
think the
that.
I think the biggest opportunity for us is on the marketing side. We are, starting to kind of follow in you guys' footsteps where we're looking at implementing a lot more social media marketing. I don't know if it'll be a podcast, but I think that several of us will have, including myself, will have various platforms that we're launching in 2024 to not just continue to brand Kaiser, but to brand our personal teams. And I think that there are AI tools out there to help you be more efficient in putting together that content, right? Putting together the the subtitles and all the little things that go into the different posts that somebody has to do, and it takes time, as you guys know. But I'm seeing and I'm aware of tools, whether they're AI enabled or not, that are going to help people be more and more efficient in putting content out there, um, which is important, especially when it's content like what you guys do and like we are too, where it's value, right? It's educational content and not just fluff stuff, right?
Right. So let's talk about as you work with businesses and work with your own as well. I would imagine you guys representing tenants are representing tenants of all sizes, tenants that, big, mature, have lots of professionals that they work with and are used to that, but some medium to small businesses that are still dealing with the growing pains of what it looks like to evolve into a little bit bigger business, what it looks like to not just rely on the business owner to do everything and
Absolutely.
everything else. So as businesses kind of look into 2024, we wanted to talk about professionals in the space that businesses ought to consider as being a value add for their business, or maybe reconsider whether they're worth it at all. One of those I thought was kind of interesting, and maybe this is just throwing you a softball, but for us years ago when we were considering what our lease situation would be with our office, we thought this is something we should probably look at. And we're like, well, maybe it's a little early. We've got quite a bit of time before our lease is even going to expire.
Hmm.
We thought it was very early. It didn't really turn out to be that early at all. And that process can really start long before your lease expires. Is that something businesses should be considering, at least that are leasing offices, to be talking and working with their broker?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that hinders tenants from optimizing their negotiation strength is timing. You have to get out ahead of it. And even if you think, oh, you know what, we want to renew, there's not much to do as far as maybe refurbishing the space. We can just exercise our renewal option. No, 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 no. That's one of the worst things you can do. So you want to get out ahead of it. And I would say for, the smaller businesses or the smaller footprints, let's call that 15,000 square feet and under. I would say the general rule of thumb is that you want to start that process about 24 months out, 18 to 24 months. And the reason you want to do that is because there's a lot more planning that goes into it, as you guys know, than you realize. And the negotiation process can be extended and protracted as well. And so you want to know what you're doing, whether it's a renewal or a relocation, with about, in today's market, as far as build out times, 8 to 10 months from the expiration date, at the latest, because after that point, you're going to start losing leverage the closer you move to the expiration date with the landlord. Because the landlord, the one thing that is key, right, in terms of negotiating, whether it's a renewal or a relocation, is the potential that you could leave, right? Landlords make more money when they keep their tenants. They want to keep their tenants. And so if they don't think you're going to leave because you started the process 6 months before your expiration date, and they know it's impossible for you to move into another space and have it built out to suit your needs, then they're not going to really give you a great deal. They're not going to move or budge in the terms, in those term sheets.
Well, and I have to say, 24 months sounds like a long time period. But when we were moving into this space, we started working with you about 2 years out from our lease renewal, maybe a little shorter than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we were pressed for time at the end. I mean, we got in, but
Right.
our build out was only about 90% complete. You know, there were rooms
Right.
without floors and things like that, but we were like, we just got to get in. So we moved in.
Right.
And it seemed like we had so much time at the beginning, but then it took time to find the space that we wanted. And then by the time we did that, you have lease negotiations, then you have your working with the architect on the build out. I mean, all of that just kept kind of going and going and going. Next thing you know, we're scrambling around working, you know, like madmen the last 3 months just to get into the space on time. So, you know, a lot of people think, oh, really 2 years? No, 2 years, maybe even, you know, sooner than that. So
Yeah, the larger you are as a footprint, the more
Yeah.
time you want to start out ahead. I mean, you can start out 3 or 4 years out there, and that doesn't mean that you're, you know, spending hours a day at that beginning point, but you know, you're assembling your team, right? Yes, you have your broker, but do you have your internal team that's going to be the stakeholders in this process put together? You know, what does that look like, right? Do you have your architect on board? You know, for some tenants, they want their own contractor on board as well. And again, that depends on size. And project management is another key one, right? So putting together that team early on, casting a vision, right? What do we want to do? And this is probably more important these days now more than ever as people are changing their workforce and workplace strategies, right? They're going from everybody in the office or everybody out of the office into some sort of hybrid variation. So what does that look like in our new space, whether that's new in your current location or new at another location, right? Visiting that. And that vision can change and tweak and everything else. And so, and then to your point, Sean, at the end of the process, once the lease is signed, there is so much that's out of your control from a time perspective, right? You're relying on the city for permitting. You're relying on your GC. You're relying on these materials that even your GC can't guarantee, right? They have various lead times. You know, in COVID, everybody knows that was an issue as far as supply chain. That's still not completely back to normal, right? And so you have to allow for enough time to you know that those variables, those wild cards to happen, and essentially plan on it.
Let's talk about financials. One of the things that Andy and I never wanted to do was to personally guarantee our space, our lease. We wanted the business to be the tenant and the business to pay the rent, and you know, we did not want to be personally on the hook for that. But in order to do that, we had to produce significant financials to the landlord to prove the success of the business over time and the ability of the business. And a lot of times I think that small businesses don't have the right people in place to be able to produce those types of financial statements that a landlord would look at. So talk to us about the importance of putting the right financial professionals in place for your business.
Well, I mean, it's not just from this perspective that you talked about, right? But it's critical, right? I mean, finances is the lifeblood of any business, right? So having the right professionals in place is critical. And you know, being able to talk through those financials, right? Because as you guys know, you know, and we've talked about, there's businesses of all sizes, startup, right, all the way to publicly traded. And I've been in those conversations for all of those. And most of the time, you know, there's never like 100% pristine, right, financials, even for the very large, very old organizations, right? The CFO or the vice president of finance has to be able to tell the story over the organization. You know, so that's critical to tell the story, to be able to address what may seem like a negative in those financials, and be able to walk that back and explain, you know, here's what's really happening here. And when you can do that, when you have the right people that can interpret and tell those stories, it can make all the difference in the world, from this perspective of getting financials approved for release without getting your personal possessions on the hook, proverbially. Yeah, for sure.
Darius, let's talk about documents and plans. You talked about the SWOT analysis,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that just knowing you, knowing Jonathan Kaiser over at Kaiser, and you being one of the kind of founding agents over there as well, and just knowing a little bit about the company, mission, values, core principles are really a core piece, and something that was worked on and done early on. How important is that? And is that something that if a business owner really hasn't done that, should be thinking about doing that and putting that in place going into 2024?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have a why, and the why cannot be, I want to make a lot of money, right? So, um, you have to have a why, and that why should be embedded in that vision and mission statement, those core values, etc. So, that was literally the first thing that we did, and it can grow over time. Like, we started out where I think we had like 4 or 5 core operating principles, and as you knew, it grew to 15, and we have 15. So, um, it's something that, yeah, you can take a look at it if you've already done it. And, now that you have some perspective through being in business for however long you've been in business for, how does this still resonate with me and the team? Do we want to make any modifications to this? I think that's definitely important. Should be an unwritten rule on that. And if you don't, yeah, like I said, if you don't have it, then what are you in business for? You need a why. It doesn't have to be 15 principles. It can be one, right? I want to create a better world for, fill in the blank, right? Your client base.
So, in doing that as well, let's talk about, I guess, in some respect, filling out the SWOT analysis here a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Some of what happened in 23 or in a previous year in analyzing this stuff didn't work. Some of the plans didn't work. Some of the vendors that you hired didn't work. Some of the marketing contracts maybe you entered into didn't work. Explain what process, and should the business owner going into 2024 in a new year be assessing the bad deals that they made essentially and reconfiguring things going into the new year, and how might they go about doing that?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, results matter, right? So that is the true litmus test, and we all have our blind spots. So when you have not just yourself, but a team analyzing, okay, was this a success? Was this a failure based on the results, not based on, any other thing, then you have it there in black and white. And then it's a decision. Well, okay, how do you correct this? Right? Are you going to throw good money after bad, or are you going to pivot? I mean, you guys know that's what business is pivoting all the time, right? And it's a bunch of decisions on pivoting to reach the optimal goal. And so, yeah, I mean, that's probably a more regular than annual. It's probably a, you know, if not weekly, monthly assessment, right? Ongoing assessment of those decisions and those spends that you have in order to run your business.
Yeah, and and I think sometimes those things get lost when you mentioned Kaiser had a good year. We spoke with a real estate investor the other day talking about the year where it was a really good year, and big spend items, they're not a problem until they're suddenly a problem. And when things are going great, it's easy to ignore those types of things, but it would seem to matter that, like you mentioned, there always needs to be a point to pivot. and to assess that and grow beyond it.
Right. I mean, we're a small organization, right? We're a small business, just like 90% of the businesses out there are technically small businesses. So, and so that's, it's a lifeblood of American economy. So as a small business, you don't have unlimited funds to spend. And so really looking at ROI and continually assessing, these investments and these spends is something that you have to do, right? We have to be good managers of our capital. And, the advantage of that in the small business is that you should be more nimble, right? You should be able to pivot faster. You should be able to make those decisions faster than a giant behemoth of a company that seemingly has unlimited capital reserves. So, yeah, I mean, it's just an everyday course of business for us.
When we were real small, this idea of having policies and procedures was, that's for the, like you mentioned, the big behemoths. And it didn't take long before we realized, even when we were smaller than we are now, you had to have policies and procedures. And as we've grown and kind of evolved, as all businesses do,
Hmm.
we found that not only do you have to have policies and procedures, but those constantly, it seems, to have to be reviewed. The end of the year is kind of an optimal time for that, but how often do you find it important to be able to review those things, given changing trends in the work environment, so on and so forth, that impact those policies and procedures for staff and how the company acts?
That's a good question. We have a rock star COO slash CFO that handles all of that. I have, don't don't bother me with that.
Well,
It's
that
important, but
right there.
that's why you hire great people to handle that for
Well,
you.
that begs the question and goes to, should a business consider, and at what size do they really need to consider putting those kind of people in place? The COOs, the
Yeah,
CFOs of the world, the HR folks that
yeah.
can administer those things.
I think, depending on your situation, but as really as soon as you can afford it, or think you can afford it, right? I mean, because we all know as business owner operators that are also the producers, right, of the business. We're going out, we're getting the business and we're serving the business. But when we started this business, we're wearing all hats, right? Janitor, CFO, everything. So
Right.
as soon as you can afford to get good help, you want to get it, because that's just going to make you more efficient in doing the your highest and best purpose within the organization, which is serving the clients and getting business, right? And for some people, it's just one of those two, right? Either serving the client or getting the business. It doesn't necessarily have to be both. As you grow and scale, right? You want to do, it's the 80-20 rule, right? You want to do the most valuable things to your firm and to your business that you can be doing 80% of the time. And that's not managing policies and procedures and putting those into place.
Right. But your staff will expect that you stay up to date with those. So finding
Totally.
that way to do that is important. Sean, I think you were going to jump in.
Well, in addition to policies and procedures, when businesses are small, when our law firm was small, we didn't even think about the different employee benefits, the healthcare plan, insurance, the 401ks. It was kind of each to their own, because there was only three of us at the time, and we were all attorneys. We didn't have any staff. But at what point should a business start thinking about benefit plans, and and if they have those plans in place, think about retooling those plans, what those plans look like, what they cost? What are the things that go into the idea of employee benefits?
Wow, that's a good question. And what I would say, the overriding thing to keep in mind and is to you want to be current, right? You want to be competitive. So that's always changing, as you know, right? And so again, I want to give a shout out to our CFO/COO, Faith Rocha. Speedy recovery. She just had some medical procedure done and is on the road back. And we miss you. Happy holidays. Get better soon. But yeah, we have a rock star in her. And as far as the specifics, I couldn't even answer that question. But you want to stay competitive, right? So always surveying what the competition's doing. And as we know in this age of data, we can get that data. What's the competition doing? And try to stay as competitive as you can, because the business relies on the people, right? And you have good people, you want to keep them, and in order to keep them, you got to be competitive.
Well, and that's what Andy and I discovered is, when you're hiring, one of the first questions you're going to receive is, well, what are the benefits? What type, do you have 401k? Do you have health insurance? And really, if you want to be competitive and find, good quality people that are going to fit your culture, that are going to value, your company, you have to also, value them and protect them and provide benefits. And so I just want to echo that sentiment, which is, it really is about figuring out how you're going to provide for your employees and provide a competitive opportunity for your company to, find and employ talented people.
Absolutely.
All right. With that, I think we have a question or so, Mayu. Go ahead and give them to us. All right. So question, I received a PMI with a promissory note and a mortgage as I'm in Oklahoma. No Oklahoma lawyers here. When the loan matured, we'd agreed upon an extension. Private money lenders did not present my part with an extension, but a JV agreement instead, which contained. Is that continued? Let's see. Continued verbiage to deed my properties over in lieu of foreclosure. The JV agreement was not agreed upon in writing with the other partners in our LLC. The JV agreement was only signed by one partner. The JV agreement was not sent to all parties of the LLCs. Is the JV agreement valid? Well, man, you didn't think you were going to get a law school question to start out the thing. Other than meeting with a lawyer in Oklahoma, do you have thoughts on that matter, Sean?
So can you throw up the first part of the question first? I just want to. Okay, so you're the borrower. So this is the borrower asking, hey, look, I received a private money loan, promissory note, and mortgage. So number one, consult with an Oklahoma attorney. But normally agreements involving real estate, according to the statute of frauds, have to be in writing. And so the JV agreement probably is not going to be valid or enforceable. However, if the loan has come due, and there's a balloon payment or it's matured, well, the lender does have the right, probably under the mortgage, assuming the mortgage is properly executed and recorded, they have the ability to foreclose. So it probably makes sense to hire an attorney in Oklahoma and to negotiate a renewal or extension of that loan and that mortgage.
Any other questions, Mayu? I think we had one other. You dissolve your LLC without first filing your taxes. Also, taxes have not been filed since 2020. So, like before, you need to talk with a lawyer,
or a CPA,
or a CPA. But correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. The dissolution process is a process designed. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not talking about like administrative dissolution, right? If you just stop doing anything with although they don't even do that in Arizona now, if it's an LLC, you just stays in existence unless for some reason a statutory agent stops being appointed there, then that might get dissolved. But the formal dissolution process assumes you wind up the business,
Right.
resolve debts, taxes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the question is involving basically two jurisdictions, right? Taxes would be the feds, dissolution would be the state. And so they're two separate things. So on the taxes, talk to your CPA, but I'm fairly confident that you're going to have to pay file tax returns for the years that you're missing. And then you have to generally, before you dissolve, it's a good business practice to file a final return. So you basically check a box on the return and say, hey, look, this is the last year that this company's ever going to do business. We are filing a final return. That way the IRS isn't looking and saying, oh, well, where's the 2021 return or the 2024 return or whatever the case may be. You file it as a final return so that the IRS can mark the box that says on their end, oh yeah, this company stopped doing business in whatever year it was. And then you can dissolve it with the state. But to answer your question, I don't know that the state cross-references the filing of taxes, but I'm guessing that there's some representation that you have to make. I'm pretty confident there's a representation you will have to make on the dissolution paperwork you file with the state that represents that there's no outstanding amounts due on taxes to creditors to all of that, because the state wants you to make sure that you pay your debts and obligations before you wind up and dissolve the company. So you're going to have to get the tax thing figured out, go see a CPA and get that figured out before you go and start the dissolution process.
Yeah. Darius, well, thanks so much for taking your time to be with us. We really appreciate it. Tell our listeners how they can find and connect with you.
It was my pleasure. You can connect with me in two ways. One, through the Kaiser website, which is kaiser.com, Keyser. The other, I have a team website, which is relentlessoccupierchampions.com. You can also put that in as ROCMBE.com. MBE stands for the minority business designation that I have for that entity. Really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Darius. Look forward to doing it again with you. With that, everybody, that is our episode. Make sure to be at the Collective this afternoon. And we will see you. We're off next week, but we'll see you the following Tuesday. Have a good week.
Have a good day, everyone.